The phone vibrated. I barely had time to pick up the phone when an unknown number appeared on the screen. Sofia Orlovska. The voice on the other end of the line sounded official, even cold. Yes, it's me. We're calling from the finance department. We need to discuss your debt of $20 million. I almost dropped the phone. What? Your debt? The man repeated calmly. According to the documents signed by your parents, this amount was transferred to you as an inheritance. I froze. 20 million. What debt? I never took that kind of money. This must be a mistake. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. I didn't sign anything. The documents are legally formalized, the voice replied dryly. Now this debt is completely yours. I could feel my life falling apart right now. I didn't even know it was possible to be born in such debt. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did my family hide this from me? How could they do this to me? I hung up the phone. I needed answers. I opened my contacts and pressed my mother's number. She picked up almost immediately. Sofia, what's wrong? Mom. I could barely contain the tremor in my voice. Why do I owe 20 million? There was silence on the other end. And then she exhaled. My daughter. I wanted to tell you, but they had already decided everything for me. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the phone in my hand. 20 million in debt. It couldn't be true. I opened my laptop and started looking for any information on whether it was possible to inherit the debt. In most cases, no, unless you officially agree to inherit. But if a person has signed some documents, they may be financially responsible. Some parents deliberately transfer debts to their children to avoid responsibility. My stomach clenched. Was this really what my parents had done? I picked up the phone and called my mom again. She picked up after the third ring. Sofia, please calm down. Mom, I could barely contain myself. Did you know about this? She was silent for a few seconds. It's hard to explain. No, Mom. It's very simple. Who signed these documents? I heard a heavy exhale. Your father. I felt cold. What? He took money for the business, Sofia. We thought everything was going to be okay, but then he disappeared. She fell silent again. I clenched my fists. And what happened next? The creditors started pressuring us. We didn't know what to do. And you just signed everything over to me? Mom laughed nervously. We thought we could deal with it earlier. We didn't want it to come to you. I was furious. You just wanted it to come later. When there was nothing I could do. I was trapped. My father took the money and disappeared. My mother signed papers that transferred the debt to me. I was left with someone else's problems, and I would have to be responsible for them. But I wasn't going to just give up. I would find a way to get out of this situation. And if they thought I would just keep quiet, they were very wrong. I couldn't just accept it. 20 million is not a sum that just disappears. I started digging. The first step was to check all the documents that could confirm my mother's words. I called a lawyer to get copies of the agreements my parents had signed. When they were sent to me, I immediately noticed something strange. Next to my father's signatures were additional agreements drawn up after his disappearance. But that wasn't the worst part. I noticed another signature, my mother's. She knew everything even before I became an adult. I could still believe that she didn't suspect anything at the beginning. But after my father's disappearance, she had a chance to solve it herself. Instead, she just waited in silence until the debt fell on me. I called her again. Sofia, why are you continuing this topic? She sounded nervous. You signed the contracts after Dad left. Silence. Why did you do that? We had to live somehow. Are you kidding me? I didn't even try to hide my anger anymore. You could have found a way out. You could have sold the business. You could have negotiated with the bank. It was the best solution. For whom? For yourself? She was silent. Everything was clear now. The money hadn't disappeared. She had spent it. I clenched the phone in my hand. I would not let them leave me in this trap. If she thought she could get away with it, she was very wrong. I wanted to believe that they didn't do it on purpose, that they were just in a difficult situation and didn't know how to get out. But the more I learned, the fewer excuses I found. I decided to go even further and check my mother's financial history. And I found another kicker. In the last few years, she had been receiving large sums of money on her personal account. It was the same money that put me in debt. And you know what the worst part is? She didn't spend it to pay off the loan. She lived as if nothing had happened. I saw her shopping statements, expensive restaurants, trips to resorts, branded clothes. I was bored by this sight. I had been working all this time, saving every penny, trying to survive. And she didn't even feel guilty. I called her again. She answered with the same feigned innocence. Sophia, I already told you that it was a difficult situation. It was a difficult situation for me, I interrupted coldly. And for you. It was just a convenient decision, right? She remained silent. When were you planning to tell me about it? I didn't think that. You didn't think I'd find out? She sighed heavily. It doesn't matter anymore. It does, I said clearly. What matters is that you knowingly put me in this debt. Silence. And then she said something that made me shudder. You're not going to do anything about it anyway. She said it absolutely calmly, as if she knew I wouldn't be able to fight, as if she believed that I would just accept it. She wasn't afraid, but she should have been, because at that very second I realized, I'm not going to play by their rules anymore. And if she thinks it will just go away, she will be sorry. I couldn't calm down after that conversation. Not only did my mother set me up, but she didn't even think it was a big deal. She didn't apologize. She didn't try to explain. She just said, "You're not going to do anything." And that was her biggest miscalculation. I decided to act. The next day, I went to a lawyer to find out if I could cancel this debt. But the answer stunned me. From a legal point of view, you have already accepted the inheritance. The documents were signed, so it's impossible to cancel the debt. I felt my chest tighten. So I'm doomed? The lawyer shook his head. Not quite. There is another option. You can prove that the deal was fraudulent. If we can prove that you were misled, there is a chance to invalidate the documents. Fraud. This word was a perfect fit for what my mother had done. I decided to act quickly. I started collecting all possible evidence. Bank statements that showed that my mother received money instead of paying the debt. Documents that proved that she continued to formalize transactions after my father's disappearance. Testimony from lawyers who confirmed that I was not even warned about the debt in time. But it seems that my mother felt the danger, because the very next morning I received my first threat. The phone vibrated. An unknown number. I picked up the phone. "Stop digging," said a man's voice. I froze. Who was that? It doesn't matter. Just forget about the debt and move on with your life. And what if I don't? You don't want to know. He hung up the phone. I sat with the phone in my hands, feeling anger boiling inside. Now they decided to scare me? Did they think I would just accept it? Did they really believe I would back down after all this? I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. No, I would not stop. If they started playing a dirty game, I'm going to play it even harder. And this time they will regret making me their victim. I couldn't wait any longer. They thought I would get scared and just accept my fate, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. The threat on the phone only proved that I was moving in the right direction. I decided to act tougher. I started digging deeper. I checked all the bank transactions I had access to. I pulled up old records of the company my father had once started. I found the contacts of his former partners. And then I came across something very interesting. My father hadn't actually gone missing. He signed over his share of the business to another person before he disappeared. And do you know who? To my uncle, my mother's brother. I felt everything inside shrinking. They knew where he was all this time. My mother was not a victim. She was part of a scheme. They deliberately transferred the debt to me to keep all the money. I had no more doubts. I immediately called my mother. She picked up almost immediately. "Sophia, is it you again?" I didn't let her say another word. "Where is Dad?" She froze. "What? Where?" "Dad. I don't know. You're lying. I know about the company. I know about my uncle. I know you're all in cahoots." She gasped in shock. I realized I had hit the nail on the head. "Listen to me," she began, but her voice no longer sounded so confident. "No, Mom, you listen now. I have all the evidence. And if you don't tell me the whole truth right now, I'm going to the police." There was a long pause. I waited. And finally she said something that changed everything. "Okay, I'll tell you everything. But after that, you're going to regret ever starting this." I clutched the phone in my hand. I was ready for the truth. But they weren't. I stood in the middle of the room, clutching the phone in my hand. My mother finally broke down. She realized that I had found my father's traces, and now I would not stop. "Talk," I said coldly. On the other end of the line, she sighed heavily. "Sophia, it wasn't like you think. I think that you conspired to throw the entire debt onto me and keep the money for yourself. Is that right?" Silence. I felt that familiar anger again. "Answer me, Mom. We didn't mean for it to happen this way. But you did." She closed her eyes, and I could almost hear her trying to think of an excuse. Dad didn't just disappear. I already knew that. "He hid the money," she finally admitted. "Where?" She held her breath. "In your uncle's business. He transferred the assets to it, so his creditors couldn't take it." My heart was beating faster. I felt that this was something more than just a debt. Why was the debt transferred to me? We didn't think it would go this far. Are you serious? I felt myself shaking with anger. You knew that the court would recognize me as a debtor. You knew I would have no choice. And you did nothing. "It was the only way out," she exclaimed sharply. "The only way out for whom?" "For you." She fell silent again. I could not believe that they had deliberately planned all this. They knew I would find out the truth, but they expected it to be too late. "Where is Dad now?" I asked sharply. "I don't know." "Yes, you do. Sophia, if you don't tell me right now, I'm going to the police today." I heard her breathing heavily. She was pushed into a corner. She finally broke down. "He's in France." I closed my eyes. "The address." She gave me the contact of her uncle, who covered it all. I wrote it down. "Sophia, please. There's nothing you can do about it." I hung up the phone. Now I knew everything. My father hid the money. My uncle helped him hide his assets. My mother let him transfer the debt to me. But now they couldn't stop me. And I was going to get back what they stole. Only this time, they would be the ones to pay for their actions. I held all the cards. I knew where my father was. I knew that he was not on the run, but simply enjoying life in France. I knew that my uncle was not just an accomplice, but the main executor of this scheme. And most importantly, I now had proof. I decided not to act on impulse. If I just went to them and told them that I knew the truth, they would find a way to get away with it. No, I have to do it smarter. I collected all the financial documents that confirmed the transfer of money. I found my father's former partners who were deceived just like me. I recorded all the conversations with my mother, where she admitted that she knew about the scam. But most importantly, I knew what could destroy them the most: a financial audit and tax investigation. I turned to a lawyer and journalists who specialized in corruption cases. I gave them all the documents. If my father thought he was safe in France, he was wrong. If my uncle thought he could hide the money, he was wrong. If my mother thought she could get away with it, she was also wrong. I knew they weren't expecting a blow. But soon they would realize that it was not me who was in debt, but them. The next day I received a message from my lawyer. "Sophia, they've fallen into a trap. The tax office has already started the audit. In a week, they will lose access to the accounts." I smiled. They thought I was their victim. But now I've become their worst nightmare. I didn't have to wait long. The investigation began, and the first consequences came faster than I expected. My father's bank accounts in France were frozen. The tax authorities started checking companies related to my uncle. My mother received an official notice of a financial investigation. They were not prepared for this. My mother was the first to call. I had no doubt that this would happen. "Sophia, what have you done?" "Me?" I allowed myself a slight smile. "I just found out the truth. You don't realize what you've done." "You mean I didn't let you ruin my life?" She gasped. "We're in big trouble now. Just like I was in danger of paying off a debt I didn't take on." She fell silent. For the first time in all that time, she didn't know what to say. "Sophia, I am your mother." "No," I interrupted her. "You are the person who betrayed me." She sighed. "What do you need to stop this?" I almost laughed. "Nothing. It won't stop." I hung up the phone. The next day, the news reached my father. My lawyer told him that his company was under financial arrest. He thought he would live in luxury in France. He thought no one would find him. But now he will have to answer. The same day I received another call. This time it was my uncle. "Sophia, let's talk." His voice was quiet, but there was a sense of panic in it. I smiled. "It sounds like you're in trouble." I can help you. We can work it out. Just like you fixed my life." He laughed nervously. "We're family." I interrupted him sharply. "Family doesn't betray." He exhaled. "What do you want?" "I want each of you to get what you deserve." He fell silent. I could only hear his heavy breathing. I didn't feel afraid anymore. They thought I was weak. But now they realized that I had become their biggest enemy. I knew they would fight to the last. They couldn't believe that the same girl they had deceived for years was now destroying them. But they were no longer in control of the situation. The father received an official notification of the investigation in France. The tax authorities froze all of his uncle's assets, and his company lost funding. The mother faced lawsuits because she had legally confirmed the fraudulent transactions with her signature. They could not hide any longer. I came to court confident in myself. I had proof of all the financial fraud. I had recordings of conversations where they admitted to lying. I had a legal team that was now playing on my side. The trial was short. My father was found responsible for financial fraud and tax evasion. My mother received a ban on any financial transactions. No more signed agreements on her behalf. My uncle lost all his businesses because they were linked to hidden assets. And most importantly, my debt was canceled. I don't owe anything anymore. I won the case. I was sitting in the courtroom when the judge announced the final verdict. My mother tried not to look me in the eye. My father looked calm, but it was fear. My uncle was gritting his teeth, but he knew he had lost. I got up and slowly left the hall. On the way out, my mother caught up with me. "Sophia," her voice was trembling. I turned to her. "Did you think I wouldn't do it?" She didn't answer. I looked her straight in the eye. "Now you know I'm not the kind of person to betray." She lowered her head. "What's going to happen now?" "And now," I paused, "you deal with your own problems. I am no longer their victim. And now they are left alone with their consequences." After the trial, I expected them to try to get out of it. But they no longer had a way out. My father was forced to return from France. Now he was facing an official investigation. My uncle went bankrupt. His accounts were blocked. His business was destroyed. My mother lost everything. She no longer had access to finance. Now she did not know how to survive. I saw their lives literally falling apart. And what struck me the most was that they never expected it to end like this. I received a message from a friend from my hometown. "Sophia, you won't believe this, but your mother is selling things to pay the rent." I read it without any emotion. She could have avoided all of this, but she chose to betray me. I did not sympathize. I didn't feel pity. She got what she deserved. But the real blow for them came later. I received another message. "Your father can't find a job. He has a bad reputation now. He always thought he was smarter than everyone else. He thought his schemes would work forever. But now no one wanted to deal with him. He tried to call me. I didn't even hesitate. I blocked the number. I was no longer a part of their lives. They wanted to destroy me. But in the end, they only destroyed themselves. They thought I would be their financial savior. They thought I would come back again as soon as they hit rock bottom. But this time their problems are theirs alone. My mother lost her apartment. She could not pay the rent and was forced to move to a cheap neighborhood. The father lost his business. He could no longer hide behind fake accounts. Her uncle was selling off his last assets. Once a confident swindler, he now called everyone he knew, asking them to lend him money. But most importantly, they felt for the first time what hopelessness was. When I was in debt, they didn't care. When I tried to find a way out, they just despised me. When I fought for justice, they laughed, thinking I would fail. And now they were sitting in empty apartments, with no money and no prospects, realizing that no one would save them. I received a message from my mother. "Sophia, I realize I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I didn't even answer. Then I received a message from my uncle. "Let's forget about the past. We all need to move on." I just smiled. They won't forget the past. I pressed the block button. They didn't care about me when I was in debt. Now they were left there alone. The moment came when I realized I am no longer held by the past. I no longer feel guilty for their problems. I will no longer let them control me. They have lost everything. The mother, her finances and status. Father, his business and reputation. Uncle, the last opportunities for fraud. And now they were in the place where they wanted to leave me. I received the last call. This time it was from an unknown number. I answered it. Sophia. It was my father's voice. What do you want? I know you don't want to have anything to do with us anymore. I didn't say anything. But things didn't go the way we thought they would. I almost laughed. We thought. What are you talking about? We didn't want you to suffer. We just wanted to save the day. I couldn't hold back any longer. You wanted to save yourself. And you did it at my expense. Silence. Sophia, you don't understand. No, Dad. I do understand. And you know what I finally realized? What? That I don't owe you anything anymore. I hung up the phone. No more manipulations. No more promises that everything will change. No more second chances for those who don't deserve them. I have won. And now my life belongs only to me. I was standing at the window in my apartment, looking at the city. No debts. No manipulations. No fake relatives trying to use me. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I no longer felt fear. They thought I would just accept my fate. They were sure that I would never know the truth. They believed I would never be able to stand up to them. But now they had lost everything they had. Their lives were falling apart. They saw what it means to be helpless. They had received their own verdict. I picked up my phone and opened the contact list. My mom's number. Delete. Uncle's number. Delete. The last one left was my father. I looked at the screen for a few seconds. And then I clicked block and delete. Now they were in the past. My life was starting from scratch. I am no longer their victim. I am no longer their target. I don't owe anyone anything anymore. And now I am truly free.